Since the dawn of human history, cats have been inextricably linked to games. The first competitive sprints were the result of our ancestors fleeing feline predation, because you don't have to be faster than the saber-toothed tiger, you just have to be faster than the other cavemen he's trying to eat. Thousands of years later, the stakes may no longer be life and death, but cats still feature prominently in games. Video games, that is. Ever play Alley Cat on Atari? The game where you jump into someone's apartment and find a 5,000-pound wedge of cheese? How the hell did that get there? Atari has always shown an affinity for cats. They named their handheld system the Lynx, designed a home console called the Panther, which never got released. I guess that one's an indoor cat. And then there was the Atari Jaguar, which you probably know about already. It famously looks like a toilet when joined to its CD add-on. Ironic that the console named for a cat is one of the few not to have the rectangular contours of a litter box. But Atari's cat-themed offerings now lie deep beneath the pet cemetery of gaming history. I'm instead focusing today on Super Nintendo games featuring cats. And because I can't appear live on camera this time, here's some gratuitous B-roll of Bailey Cat. She is cuter than me, but she can't beat Contra 3 on one life. In compiling a list of games such as this, it is incumbent upon me to establish some rules regarding which games do and do not count. I'm looking specifically for games which star a cat as the player character, not just any Super Nintendo game which has a cat in it. That would quickly get out of control. It would be like herding some kind of disobedient animal. So that immediately rules out a bunch of Super Nintendo games which feature cats, but only as enemies. Like Mega Man X3 has Neon Tiger as one of its bosses. That doesn't count. Speedy Gonzales, Los Gatos Bandidos sounds like it would be a feline fiesta, but aside from the bosses, you're mostly fighting bats and birds. An American Tail, 5 Goes West, has some nice looking sprite work on its cat enemies, which blow up upon defeat, but yeah, it doesn't count for our purposes. Jim Lee's Wildcats. Pretty sure there are no actual cats in this game, right? It was a Super Nintendo exclusive though. The Itchy and Scratchy game features a cat and mouse team who are co-stars, a dramaturgical dyad if you will. But you only play as Itchy, so it's still not quite what we're looking for. This game's existence never made a lot of sense to me anyway. Itchy and Scratchy are beloved characters within the fictional universe of The Simpsons. They're not popular in their own right. Tom and Jerry were the obvious inspiration for Itchy and Scratchy, and hey, they have a Super Nintendo game too. But again, you only get to play as Jerry, or Tuffy in 2-player mode. Tom appears during boss fights, that's it. It's a relief to skip this one because it is impossibly bland. Shaq Fu is also disqualified, and you may wonder why I'm even bringing it up, but there is an alien cat girl among its roster of fighters. That may be intensely erotic, but not really relevant for the purposes of our list. In Brutal, Paws of Fury, you can fight as an anthropomorphic lion or a cheetah, but you wouldn't want to because this game is the cheesiest thing since that Omega Cheddar in Alley Cat. It has instant replay, fight statistics, a story mode, but no one bothered to refine the actual gameplay. If you want a one-on-one fighting game with wacky flair, just fire up Clay Fighter. Speaking of which, Claymates, from the same developer as Clay Fighter, edges into the gray area for inclusion on our list. You can play as a cat here, sometimes. It's one of several animal forms you morph into to navigate the stages. Closer call here, but I'm still gonna say this kitty is only incidental to the game itself. Claymates isn't about being a cat. I've had to rule out a number of cartoon duos so far, but maybe things are looking up with Ren and Stimpy. Once again, they are co-headliners, but I figure as long as you get to play as Stimpy, that is good enough to make the list of games featuring cats. I hope I don't regret that decision, because for some reason there are 4 Ren and Stimpy games on Super Nintendo. That seems like overkill. Each game had a different developer though, so maybe at least one of them is decent. I'll check them out in release order. First up is Veediots, which bases each of its 4 levels on episodes of the cartoon. Not that I needed additional backstory, but according to the manual, the goal of the game is to help Ren and Stimpy escape from their own TV show. The instructions are written in character, which seems clever, but all 4 of these games did the same thing there, probably because they shared a publisher. Veediots has 2 levels where you play as Ren, then 2 where you play as Stimpy. This is like turning in your homework knowing it's C- quality and not caring. If you rented this one, fine, but if you purchased it, you'd feel ripped off. Next is Fire Dogs, and this game follows the plot of one specific episode of the Ren and Stimpy show where they're pretending to be Dalmatians. How do you base an entire 16-bit game on a single cartoon short? Well, I'd say don't do that. Trust me, I already tried and failed to develop Steamboat Willie Gaiden, but since it's more than 30 years too late to heed my warning, let's see what they came up with. Well, it's pretty half-assed, but at least we're playing as Stimpy J. Cat. All you do is roam the firehouse, collecting equipment and avoiding enemies. Ignoring the graphics on display, this functionally could have been an Atari 2600 game. If you can beat the unforgiving timer, you'll advance to the part of the game called On the Job. Here, the duo catch random garbage raining down from buildings, which don't look like they're on fire, by the way. Complete that, and the cycle starts over, except now it's Tuesday in the firehouse. Play all the way through Friday, and congratulations, you beat the game. It's perplexing to see that a title this simple actually has a password feature. I shouldn't be surprised that Ren and Stimpy games poured forth like raw sewage, because the TV show was wildly popular. I was there for it, yet it's still difficult to explain its runaway success. This cartoon was like underground, if not straight up outsider art, airing as children's television. Much of its content and imagery is actively repellent, but if you love cartooning and animation, this was like a supernova of creativity when it debuted. You couldn't look away. Maybe it was a tall order to translate that insanity to any video game, but I'm not too impressed with the results so far. Time Warp was the third attempt to capture the Ren and Stimpy magic on Super Nintendo, and it is at least the most ambitious of these four titles. It might also be the best, but that's just kinda by default. Like, there is a hell of a lot more game here than in Fire Dogs, even if that amounts to way more stuff that pisses me off. You can choose your character, so of course I'm gonna be Stimpy, which means using the second controller. Even if I wasn't sticking to the cat theme, I'd avoid playing as Ren because his constant thrashing and screaming is really irritating. The sound of Stimpy's hairball attack is pretty grating too, though. Not only is there two-player co-op available, the plot and structure of this game are also more complex than the others. During the first two stages, you have to collect enough proofs of purchase to earn your time machine. Fail that, and the game just ends. Succeed, and you'll experience the Time Stream, a graphically impressive flying sequence. You have to navigate this at the end of every episode in order to advance to the next side-scrolling area. The gameplay here is a hybrid of platforming and beat-em-up action, resulting in a chaotic, frustrating experience. The game's many unique character animations are its greatest asset, but they can make it difficult to tell what's going on, and I take hits constantly. The final insult is that if you finish the game with less than $50, Stimpy says this card should be given to someone who can actually play games. Fucking go right ahead, man. Finally, there's Buckaroos, a bit of an anticlimax after the absurdity that was Time Warp. This one has some variety in gameplay, but tends more towards the walk to the right and bitch slap everything in your path format. You alternate between levels set in a Sherwood Forest parody, the Old West, and the classic Ren and Stimpy episode, Space Madness. This game is debatably superior to Veediots, but the music in Buckaroos is really bad. Thank Log that there are only 4 Ren and Stimpy games on Super Nintendo, because that's all I can take. As you may expect, many of the other titles starring cats are also based on 90s cartoons, although not all of them were shows I watched. For example, Eek the Cat. This series, or at least the one episode I checked out, places Eek in harm's way at every turn with a gag-a-minute style that reminds me of the Roger Rabbit shorts. The design of the human characters is really off-putting. They look like goddamn monsters. Eek himself is mild-mannered, constantly rescuing others from dangers they never perceive. And that character motivation carries over to the Super Nintendo game, where Eek chaperones an NPC through each level. They never stop walking, so you'll have to steer them to safety and provide a corrective kick up the ass when necessary. This wasn't designed as an Eek game, though. Originally, it was an Amiga title called Sleepwalker, where you play as a heroic dog. Amiga couldn't display as many colors as Super Nintendo, which may be why these graphics look dark and muddy. It wasn't simply reskinned. The levels are broken down into smaller chunks here, and the Eek game has a badass original soundtrack. Savage Steve Holland's signature on the title screen is a trip, because I recognize him as the director of movies like Better Off Dead and One Crazy Summer, which had a decidedly cartoonish aspect to them. The stages are tough, and just knowing that every single one will be an escort mission means that I have no interest in completing this game. All I want to do is leave Granny to die in the jungle so I can go exploring, because Eek really flies once you get moving, even if his momentum feels a little strange. The Space Madness levels in Buckaroos were kinda like escort missions, and those sucked too, so an entire game based around this mechanic is simply too much for me. Another cat tune which got its own Super Nintendo game is one I did watch, SWAT Cats. It might look like a Ninja Turtles ripoff, but it's closer to something like Batman. After all, they're not mutants. Everyone is a cat in this show. Damn right they are. Our heroes T-Bone and Razor maintain secret identities and rely on gadgets, not superpowers. The show had only 26 episodes. I guess that was enough to warrant a Super Nintendo adaptation in 1995. This is the best cat game I've played so far, but that's not saying much. One look tells you that it's vastly inferior to older titles like Mega Man X. You can play each stage as either the bruising T-Bone or nimble Razor, and the game has a perfunctory experience system which reminds me of Captain America and the Avengers on NES. Although your weapons level up periodically, you never feel much stronger, and you fight the same enemies over and over. I can imagine SWAT Cats becoming a legitimately good game in the hands of someone like Capcom, but as it is, it's average. Except for the airborne battles, these reek. Are we flying the turbojet at Mach 2 directly towards the pavement? That ain't smart. If I'm delving into obscurity in search of cat games, I might as well peruse the Super Famicom library as well. I can't read a lot of these game titles, so I'm probably missing a few, but I guarantee Japan had some kitty content. How about Cats Run? I think I got bamboozled with this one. Cat must be the name of one of these anime babes. It seems like a decent racing game, especially if you've always wanted one where you can drive a Suzuki Jimny. Oh wait, there's a cat. And he's running. That's the Cat's Run. Asameshimae Nyanko looks promising, and I assume I'm pronouncing that properly, don't correct me. Oh yeah, we struck gold here, 16-bit kittens as far as the eye can see. It's a puzzle game, and while I can't interpret any of its text, I can still play it because it's basically Othello. You know Othello, it was on NES, hell, it was on everything. The difference in this game, which I definitely know how to pronounce, is that each turn you initiate a one-on-one kitten fight which is decided by rock, paper, scissors button presses. The game is very cute, but not terribly ambitious, which reminds me of someone I know. Zigzag Cat sounds like a good candidate for feline representation. But I've learned the hard way that these Japanese game titles aren't reliable indicators of which ones actually have cats in them. Like, this might be a giant robot dating simulator, who knows? The story of this game is... well, the gameplay... What am I doing? Naming my character? I do see a cat there, but if Zigzag Cat turns out to be some 60-hour RPG, I am out. Once this wizard guy finally stops talking, the game reveals itself to be unlike anything I've ever seen. It's a brick-breaking Arkanoid-style game where your cat morphs into your projectile. Would this be considered a puzzle game? A shooter? A dungeon crawler? Between stages, there are towns and shops, but the game doesn't have true RPG aspects. Power-ups are temporary, and you can't customize or level up your character. Zigzag Cat is actually kinda cool, if only for as long as the novelty lasts. Finally, there's Doraemon. He may be a robot, and he may not have ears, but he's still a cat. Doraemon is one of the most popular manga characters ever, and is at least somewhat known to Western audiences nowadays. That wasn't the case in the 90s though, so of course his video games remained Japanese exclusives. And there were 4 of them on Super Famicom. These cat games have a bad habit of Malthusian reproduction. Spay or neuter your pets, people, even if they are robots. I'm not about to raw dog an entire Doraemon quadrilogy, but we can take a quick look at each of the games. The first 2 are super basic platformers suitable for younger kids. These look like the sort of games that could have been reskinned for Super Nintendo, just slap whatever character sprites you want in there. The third game has a time travel theme, which is apparently a regular occurrence in Doraemon lore. The fourth feels like a more polished version of the same formula. This one doesn't make you walk around town talking to people. You can play as different characters, but I'm not going to pretend to know anything about this franchise. The games are all very similar and very easy. It's time to cut my losses and get back to Super Nintendo. The Lion King. That's like the biggest slam dunk on this list. Everyone knows it due to the popularity of the movie, the generally high reputation of Disney games on the console, and its notorious second stage where monkeys and rhinos fling Simba all over the savannah. Some people claim it's not that hard once you know what to do, which I guess you could say of almost any video game, or any aspect of life really, but it's not as if level 2 is the only difficult section.
You have no idea.
If you've clawed your way to the top of Pride Rock to dethrone the usurpative queer icon Scar, then you have earned your place as King of Beasts. Not every game with a feline hero needs to be a Shakespearean tragedy though. That's why we have rubbish like Chester Cheetah, Too Cool to Fool. This is another game where the instructions are delivered in character, except this time they're riddled with typos. As is Chester Cheetah Way, this is a one-person play. There were other product-shilling games on Super Nintendo, but none as basic as this. B jumps while the X, Y, and A buttons aren't used at all. Chester needs to collect a motorcycle part from each level to escape the zoo. And really? We gotta give this motherfucker lore? He eats Cheetos, that's all. Or apparently that's not all, because there's another Chester Cheetah game on Super Nintendo, Wild Wild Quest. The simple fact of its existence bothers me, however, it does look and play better than Too Cool to Fool. This is a direct sequel, so Chester has his motorcycle and is now cruising the nation in search of Hip City. I'm really glad they maintained continuity, otherwise I would have had a major meltdown. This game is merely forgettable. I just wish it came with a coupon for 50 cents off Cheetos like the first game did. Those things are $8 a bag now. The life and times of Chester Cheetah was a demented premise for Super Nintendo games, but I know one that's even stranger. So much so that it was never released. Socks the Cat Rocks the Hill is conceptually one of the wildest games to be almost released on the Super Nintendo. It was finished in 1993, then cancelled, and the ROM only became widely available in 2018. As you can see, it's another mediocre platformer. Nothing remarkable there. However, this game's protagonist is based on a real-life cat named Socks, the presidential pet of Bill Clinton. That's screwy enough, but then the game itself is a political satire. Socks is responsible for tracking down stolen nuclear codes, which is pretty heavy shit, and not something I would trust a cat with. Right from the first level, the controls don't quite mesh with the stage layouts, as I barely have enough room to hit these running jumps. The only reason to keep playing is to see the boss fights against former presidents and political figures. I'm fighting Richard Nixon in a Super Nintendo game.
Computers may be twice as fast as they were in 1973, but your average voter is as drunk and stupid as ever.
And Tricky Dick was still alive in 1993. If this had been released as planned, he could have played it himself. Socks, the real Socks that is, lived until 2009. That's long enough that he could have watched the first 3 seasons of The Angry Video Game Nerd. But I can assure you that the rest of the cats on this list are all fictional. Unless Chester Cheetah is a prisoner of Area 51 or something. The Pink Panther never achieved political office, but he was about 30 years old by the time of his Super Nintendo game's release. That regrettably necessitated a reimagining for the 1990s. His old cartoons portrayed him as an elusive trickster. If you dared to chase him, you had already failed. His newer show still uses the classic Henry Mancini theme music, but there's one massive difference. The Pink Panther talks. What can I say? I do not like it when he talks.
Ooh! Kind of like the Weather Channel on Fast Forward.
And if you want to remind me that he did talk in a couple of the old shorts, I know, and I didn't like it then either. Because this is Pink Goes to Hollywood, its levels parody films like Pinkenstein, Honey, I Shrunk the Pink, and Pinkenhood. And some are just hallucinatory nonsense, like swimming through pink lemonade. There's nothing terribly challenging here, except that Pink himself is a slippery son of a bitch. It's tough to land precision jumps, sprinting around is liable to get you killed, and your huge character sprite is a major liability. Hey, I know another cat who lives in Hollywood, a certain famous bobcat you've probably been waiting to hear me mention. Bonkers! Why, what did you think I was gonna say? This is another character I'm unfamiliar with, although he apparently got his start on a show called Raw Tunage, which sounds like the name of a website I would have been desperately deleting from my browser history in the early 2000s. His solo series, and the Super Nintendo game based on it, cast Bonkers as a bumbling beat cop. I've read that this was originally pitched as a Roger Rabbit show, and I'm not sure if that's true, but I do see the similarities. I also see the words Capcom and Disney, so my expectations are immediately raised for this game. Even though Capcom didn't develop it in-house, Bonkers delivers a solid run-to-the-right and jump-on-stuff experience, and may even be the best cat game on Super Nintendo. The graphics are very appealing, and Bonkers dashes through levels much more effectively than Pink Panther's suicidal sprint. The downside is that Bonkers is stupid easy. There's little replay value, but it's the sort of game you can pick up and rip through without much practice, the total opposite of The Lion King. Okay, I know who you came to see. It's Bubsy in Claw's Encounters of the Furred Kind. Wordplay so hairball-worthy that I almost regret formulating a list of cat games in the first place. Everybody knows Bubsy, if only by reputation. For many years, he survived as a fringe meme, until a new Bubsy game appeared in 2026. There's a schism between the people who played this game when it was new, possibly getting Stockholm syndromed by this loudmouth bastard as a child with few gaming options, and those who are mostly aware of Bubsy's incessant catchphrases, failed cartoon, and misadventures in the third dimension. I am in that second group, so I'm experiencing this free of any nostalgia. The game isn't difficult, but it is enragingly easy to die. When you have these sprawling levels with both vertical and horizontal areas, yet no clear path to the exit, it ceases to feel intentionally designed. Instead, it's just air to jump around in. Until you fall, because that means death for Bubsy.
Did I mention I don't like heights?
Platforming games should not have fall damage, unless it's something realistic, like Out of This World. I guess you're supposed to use your glide ability in these situations, but that doesn't help either, because I don't know what I'm sailing my ass into. These alien enemies barely move, and they don't have to. I die the moment I brush up against them. Yeah, one-hit deaths. What could possibly go wrong? That's the main thing ruining this first Bubsy game. I don't really like anything about it, but it does look better than most of these other cat games. Bubsy's jump is superior to Pink Panther's. I'm not longing to shut off the Super Nintendo after 5 minutes like I was with Eek the Cat. Bubsy is a failed opportunity to deliver a memorable platformer, and the failure is made more glaring by the attention the Bubsy series invited through its aggressive marketing campaign. That's right, series. Super Nintendo also got Bubsy 2, The Litterbox Strikes Back. Nah, there was no subtitle for this one. It both is and isn't more of the same. You have a choice of which levels to play, there are actually weapons to pick up this time, and hallelujah, you don't die in one hit. You can take 3 hits now. No fall damage either. While they solved some of the major problems from the first game, the level design still has me shitting kittens. I don't even know what I'm doing here, but look at me go. I didn't amass this list of games under the premise that they were bad. I simply wanted to know which Super Nintendo titles let you play as a cat. And it turns out that many of them are, in fact, quite wretched. Whose idea was this anyway? Bailey, you got some explaining to do. I can't stay mad at you. I'm just amazed I got through the part about Bill Clinton's cat without referencing blowjob.
Oh, are you still playing this thing?